Welcome to this edition of Like Nobody's Business. I'm Mary Beth Seawald, President and CEO of the Vegas Chamber. You know, water is one of the most important resources in our community. With ongoing drought conditions and what's even been called a drying climate, the depletion of water in Lake Mead and the complexities of the Colorado River allocations, what are Southern Nevada's options now, and what are our options for making sure that we have enough water in our future? So with that, I'm pleased to have with us the general manager of the Las Vegas Valley Water District and the Southern Nevada Water Authority, Mr. John Ensminger. John, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
John, you know, water is a big topic for us lately. Our water supply is important. It's an important topic for the future of Las Vegas. So let's kind of go straight to the facts. What's the current water supply in Southern Nevada? And, you know, the big question is, everybody's asking me, are we in danger of running out of it?
Well, I think I'll start with the good news, and that is here in Southern Nevada, we really are the most physically secure city in the Colorado River Basin, and that's because we're located upstream of Hoover Dam, and our community has invested $1.5 billion in the third intake and the low lake level pumping station. So we know we can continue to deliver water to the 2.3 million people that live here, even in a scenario where the federal government can't deliver water downstream to Arizona, California, and Mexico. So that's point number one for everybody to understand, is we're very physically secure. Now, in terms of being able to continue to accommodate economic expansion, we need to continue to conserve. So our 50-year resource plan that we do every year shows that we need to get from about 112 gallons per person per day to about 86 gallons per person per day in order to accommodate what we see, according to the Center for Business and Economic Research, will be a population of expansion from about 2.3 million people today to about 3.7 million people by the 2070s.
Well, you know, John, you talk about water conservation, and you all have done a tremendous job of educating the public on the need to conserve. I think Las Vegas and Southern Nevada is a leader across the entire country, if not the United States, in conservation and ways to get creative in conserving. What more would you say that residents and businesses can do to assist in this effort?
Well, I'd say the number one thing would be compliance with Assembly Bill 356. So that bill, which was signed by the governor in June of 2021, requires the removal of all non-functional turf. And there's definitions now that have been adopted by our board by the end of 2026. And even though, you know, that's, you know, still a couple of years down the road, the faster that our HOAs, the faster that our business community can adopt and take that turf out, that's water that not only won't we use this year, but we can bank it in Lake Mead for future years use. So that would be number one, would be that removal of that non-functional turf, but just supporting all of our, you know, conservation initiatives where we have golf course budgets, you know, we have pool size limitations. There's going to be some rate stuff that will only affect the top couple deciles of water users, but understand that every single section and sector in our community has a role to play in conservation, and not stand up and say everybody but me, but support, you know, everybody doing their part to make sure that we continue on this journey.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know the Southern Nevada Water District is giving rebates and incentives, I guess. How do individuals and businesses go about sort of learning what to do, how to get those rebates and those benefits?
Yeah, just go to our website, snwa.com, and there's a link right there to our Water Smart Landscape programs, and it's pretty self-explanatory in terms of how to apply. You know, then we send people out and measure the turf. Once the conversion is complete, you know, we send somebody back out to confirm that it's been done, and then we send you a check.
Okay, great. So back to the Southern Nevada Water Authority working with the Colorado River Basin partners. I know the compact was written in I think it was 22, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so how are we working with our partners now to manage that water supply, and what are we going to do moving forward with them?
Yeah, well, I think it is important to recognize that out of all the legal entitlements on the river, 7 states, 2 countries, Nevada only has 1.8% of the legal entitlement to the Colorado River. So we're not a huge drain on the system, but historically we've played kind of a facilitation role between the other states, primarily Arizona and California. Historically haven't gotten along very well, so we've tried to be at the negotiating table with them and find mutually agreeable paths forward. But I think we're at a stage where the biggest challenge I've ever seen for the river is right in front of us, because the federal government testified in the Senate the first couple of weeks of June and said the system as a whole needs to cut 2 to 4 million acre feet of current uses, which, just for context, the current uses are about 15 million acre feet. So 2 to 4 million is an enormous reduction across the entirety of 7 states and 2 countries. And that's what's being negotiated between the states right now.
That is a lot, and a lot has changed, I guess, since 1922 significantly, right? So when that water was allocated, is there an opportunity to reopen that compact and change those allocations based on current population and industry?
Well, I think, any change is likely to result in less water allocated to everyone, not more water allocated to any one person. And just logistically, for folks to understand, to change that compact entered into under the compact clause of the US Constitution. So to change it, you need a majority vote of 7 state legislatures, the signature of 7 governors, the House, the Senate, and the president. Also, and the idea that all that would be done so 6 states take less and 1 state gets a little bit more, it's not politically realistic.
Yeah, so the answer is no.
That's the short answer, yeah.
Gotcha. Well, and so are there, we're looking at development, economic growth in Southern Nevada, and from a business perspective, our members call and say, hey, are we going to be able to continue on here growing in Southern Nevada? So, if we had to, we talk about conservation. I guess it's a balance, right? A fine balance between conservation. But then are there any options for increasing water in Las Vegas?
Yeah, we do have one supply side project that's in our current resource plan, and that's our partnership with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. So MET is our counterpart in Southern California. They're like 10 times our size, because their service territory is Santa Barbara in the north down to San Diego in the south, right? So 19 million coastal Californians are supplied by Metropolitan. But there in coastal California, almost all the water that hits a drain is treated and then discharged into the Pacific Ocean. So it's not reused. So MET has a $4 billion project to take all that wastewater that's being captured and treated, distribute it through 4 groundwater basins in Southern California, recharge the groundwater basins, and then be able to reuse that water. And our board of directors has already allocated $750 million for us to participate in that project, take an equity share in that new facilities, and in return, California will leave a piece of their Colorado River apportionment in Lake Mead for our use. So we are looking at ways to add to our supply, but the demand management and conservation is far and away the most important factor in our resource planning.
Okay, well, that's fascinating. I wasn't aware of that. That's actually gives a little more hope for more water. But like you say, we want to continue on educating people on how they can conserve, because that's really the way we're going to be able to have any level of sustainability, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there will probably be opportunities for other projects like that, but they're relatively small in scope. I mean, everybody wants to talk about desal, right? You probably get asked about desalination all the time. I know I get asked about desalination all the time. But just to give people a feel for the scale, the only new desal plant that's come online on the west coast of the United States in the last 25 years is at Carlsbad, and it produces 50 million gallons of water a day, which sounds like a lot, but our facilities at Lake Mead can produce 900 million gallons of water a day. So, when you start talking about orders of magnitude, yes, you're going to be able to find this project we're doing with Met. Yes, you're going to be able to probably do some desal facilities in the next 20, 30 years. But conservation is always going to be the centerpiece because of the cost and the scale of new supplies.
Okay. And one thing that's interesting to me, I recently had I was educated a little bit more about how to think about this. We've called it a drought for so long, but a drought implies that it can get better, right? That if we have some rain or the monsoon season, everything will be just fine. But truly what I've learned lately from other experts too, is that it's a drying climate. And we need to kind of get used to inhabiting this drying climate and being better at living in this climate than instead of changing this climate to suit our needs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All the smart scientists that I talk to no longer refer to it as a drought. They refer to it as aridification. So the Western U.S. becoming more arid as the climate warms and as there's less precipitation. A lot of the projections that we're looking at show that the Colorado River is only going to produce about 11 million acre feet of water going into the future. There's 17.5 million in legal entitlements. So obviously, substantial reductions to what people thought they had agreed to in the 20th century are going to be, materially different than what we actually have in the 21st century. So fortunately, here in Southern Nevada, we've been a world leader in adapting and driving down our water use. I mean, we're using 26% less water today than we were in 2002, and we've added almost 800,000 people. So economic expansion, robust economies are compatible with using less water, but it takes investment and it takes political will.
And it takes discipline on the part of our residents and our businesses to comply, right?
Yeah, and again, every sector of our community has a role to play here, and it takes discipline from everyone.
And just last John, I saw on the news this morning, it was a network story. This is not just here at home in Las Vegas. This drying climate seems to be an issue across the globe. The story talked about Europe, where they are doing things like restricting travel because of the drying climate or the drought that they're having in Eastern Europe. So this is a global issue, as we've known, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a global issue. We're seeing this everywhere, and it's hitting some places different than others. Some cities are going to have to deal with sea level increases. Some are going to have to deal with superstorms. Our manifestation of this is going to be less water, so we're going to have to find a way to adapt to that reality.
All right. Well, John, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your service to our community, especially. And thank you so much again. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. And when we come back, we'll hear how new technology is helping to address those water shortages. Stay with us.
As humans, we're visual creatures. In fact, American adults spend nearly 6 hours each day watching video, and we're evolving and expanding across screens. Whether we're surfing the web at work, streaming our favorite show in a waiting room, or watching the game live at home, Cox Media's digital video solutions can deliver your business's message to consumers in a way that creates a meaningful connection and drives them to take action. Grow your business. Call Cox Media today.
Remember old Vegas where the customer was king? The Casablanca in Mesquite is just like Vegas used to be. Play over 40 of your favorite table games.
Play over 800 slot and video poker machines and get comps, free play, and cash back.
Get away and play 2 18-hole championship golf courses. Or pamper yourself in our full-service salon and unwind in our world-class spa. Now this is my kind of getaway. Reserve your $99 golf or spa getaway today. It's just like Vegas used to be.
You're watching Like Nobody's Business with Mary Beth Seawald.
Welcome back to this edition of Like Nobody's Business. I'm Mary Beth Seawald. We continue our conversation about the water supply in Southern Nevada today. Welcome Cindy Wallace-Lage. She's the Executive Director of Sustainability and Resilience at Black & Veatch, which is an international infrastructure design firm. Welcome to the show, Cindy.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Well, thanks so much. It wasn't that long ago that you were actually out in Las Vegas, and you were a keynote speaker at the LVGEA's event called Perspective. One of the things you talked about quite a lot that has really resonated with me, and certainly with a lot of other folks who were in the audience that day, was when you were talking about the difference between a drought and a drying climate. And you said, a drought kind of gives the perception that this is going to be over someday, but we're not in a drought in Las Vegas and a lot of other climates across the world. We're in a drying climate, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, it is, and it seems like such a simple distinction, but it's huge for the mindset and how you adapt to what you're thinking. And so I really find it intriguing when we do talk about, well, it's the worst drought we've had in however long, or we've had droughts before, which then means there's an automatic assumption that this will end and I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to some other place that I liked that was normal in my mind of whatever I've defined as normal, as opposed to accepting reality and grounding myself in today and realizing I need to act like this isn't going to change. Or if it's going to change, it's going to get drier potentially. And what does that look like? And how do I operate in that? And if I do that, then I'm grounding myself and making solutions going forward and acting as opposed to waiting. Because otherwise it gets into the wait. If I can just make it till X, then it's going to be okay. Now, we don't know when that is. And it's very possible that we're going to be at a time frame here that most of us in our lifetimes will not see a shift that is going to be any less dry than it is today. So we need to accept that we're in a drying climate. And then how do we operate successfully in that? We have the ability to figure that out, but we have to adopt the mindset of this is where we are.
Yeah. And I know, Cindy, you're a global expert on water and sustainability and so forth. But you also work closely with the Southern Nevada Water Authority. Is that right?
I do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about, so you're not only an expert on other countries. We talked about Australia and so forth, but you are an expert about Lake Mead and the Colorado River Commission.
I hate to say expert on that because there are a lot of people who know so much more on this, but I am well aware of the challenges that are facing all of the states that feed off of the Colorado River and the challenges of how all of them can be sustainable off of a river that was over allocated when it was defined as to what the allocations are. And since then, it has really, really seen significant reduction in flow, significant. When you look at it, it's definitely, I think it's close to a third of what it was when it was the allocations were originally done. And so when you look at that, it is imperative that everyone work together, think, how can we operate differently? This is probably, it's hard to imagine what level of collaboration and partnership is more important than what is needed on the 7 states to be able to deal with the dwindling supply of the Colorado River and what it means to Lake Mead and what it means to a water supply and what it means to a power supply. It starts to show just how connected infrastructure is. And then looking at how we can operate differently is really going to take urban communities. It's going to take the ag community. It's going to take looking at a political agreements that are out there and what people are trying to achieve in their growing communities. And what does growth look like, right? We're going to have to look at that differently because we're going to have to make decisions different about potentially around food. We're going to have to make decisions differently about which businesses can be where, how do we attract industry, and then how do we live in a way that we are focused on preserving, conserving, and then looking at how do we do that and still allow people to have the growth in a community, to have the jobs that are needed in a community to be sustainable, to have the economic growth. So all of that has to be really thought through, and it's extremely complicated, but it also, to me, always reminds me, water is so foundational for any community to have prosperity, to be able to be sustainable. And so we really have to get back to that again, that grounding space to say, how are we going to do this? And be very realistic. And that's going to have to come for all of the states. There has been a huge focus by the community to make change. So putting in water efficient appliances, getting to, a no outdoor watering unless it's, critical for some kind of parks, recreation type of elements. The leak detection, a lot of places around the US have significant water loss that happens from their water lines that are just leaking and not being fixed. And Vegas has been very, very proactive to make sure that that's not happening. I think that the level of scrutiny into making sure that water was there to allow the continued growth has been tremendous. But it's definitely going to keep going to the next levels. I mean, there is, like you said, there's no silver bullet. There's no one answer. There isn't like, oh, if we just did X, all of a sudden we're going to have all of the water that we need. It's going to require really continued tightening up and really taking the thought process to the point of everything that's being done, every task, every, building, every manufacturing, whatever is being done. Is water necessary? Is there an alternative that can be used to achieve the same function? Or can that function even be done in Las Vegas? Can that be done in a drying community? And then it's going to be selective of what can be done. There's a lot of businesses that don't require water that can be utilized. So that may become the attraction for those businesses. But there are others that are just going to have to say no to. We cannot give away that water and share it because we have an existing community that must come first.
Yeah, so you're saying, for example, if GoEd or the LVGEA were to talk to a company and talk to them about moving here to Southern Nevada, or really to anywhere in the state, frankly, they would need to look at their water use footprint and make a determination whether that company is a good match for a climate like Nevada.
Right. And I don't know that we haven't always taken that approach, right? We've operated more in the abundance mindset, or at least adequate water that we will figure it out. And we're at a point now that I think we have to say no, that we're not going to do that. And it may mean that there's some businesses that are in Las Vegas that won't be able to survive there. And then it's going to be looking at what other businesses can come in and survive. So it's to start utilizing that water has to be a major lever that's used to understand how the community can grow.
And I know that, again, I've talked about this and this really struck me as well when you were in Las Vegas. You have experience in destinations like countries like Australia, different ones. And, so when you look at Southern Nevada and the Colorado River Basin states, were there some big takeaway solutions that those other countries implemented that would be helpful here in Las Vegas?
I don't know that there was a lot more that's been done than what we have talked about that's been done in Vegas, other than I do believe when you look at the success of Western Australia, they truly went from, we are not in a drought, we are in a drying climate. And it was very, very intentional and intensive community education and engagement to make sure that everybody was part of the solution, that everybody was bought in. And that takes a lot of time and effort, because you've got to get, once you can get to the head and then you can get to the heart, then you can get to the hands, that everybody's going to pitch in and do their part. But if you just do head or heart, you're never going to get to the hands. And so I think when you look at Western Australia, they did a tremendous job of engaging in the community to make sure that everybody understood and could communicate. Like you had the elevator speech down as to why we have to conserve, because everybody understood the impact. And therefore it starts to filter in to the choices that you make, the decisions that you have about your own household, your own lifestyle, the businesses that are there, how they operate. It just starts to really penetrate everything that's happening in community, and therefore decisions are made with the right filter and allow them to be able to keep bringing down their water usage.
Okay. I know you also have a concept called One Drop. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it is. I focus it really, it's to make sure that we always keep a perspective of the water drop and how critical it is and how we have to value it appropriately. And when I say valuing it, it's saying what is the best potential that we can gain from that drop. And it doesn't mean it's necessarily the cheapest. It's not usually the easiest, but it's the most value to create a sustainable community, how to create a thriving community. So that's going to be, again, to that point of, is there an alternative? Can we do something else and not even have to use the drop? That might be the best plan right there. Or are there multiple benefits? So we're going to be able to maximize the value because there's an economic benefit, there's an environmental benefit, there's a societal benefit. So we're really looking holistically about what the value is of that drop. Is there a systems mindset? Can we look at how everything is connected? So water, power, telecommunications, all of these things. How do we bring that together and say, okay, this use of the drop is going to have value on other infrastructure that's going to make our community more sustainable. And then, I think it's also that element of just making sure that we're remembering, and this is probably the hardest thing for most people to manage through, is water is so local, right? We have to look at the local ecosystem. We have to look at the geology, the hydrology. We have to understand how we can best use the value of what we have in that watershed to really, really gain the potential of the drop. And all of that coming together, that is that single drop focus. And to me, the visual is if I can just keep the drop in front of me and make the right decisions, thinking if that is the only drop I have, how do I best use it?
Thank you for coming out to visit us in Las Vegas. And I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of you as we go through all of these steps as a destination to work with our sister states on our water issue.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you today.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks again.
Remember Old Vegas where the customer was king? The Casablanca in Mesquite is just like Vegas used to be. Play over 40 of your favorite table games.
Play over 800 slot and video poker machines and get comps, free play, and cash back.
Get away and play 2 18-hole championship golf courses, or pamper yourself in our full-service salon and unwind in our world-class spa. Now this is my kind of getaway. Reserve your $99 golf or spa getaway today. It's just like Vegas used to be.
As humans, we're visual creatures. In fact, American adults spend nearly 6 hours each day watching video, and we're evolving and expanding across screens. Whether we're surfing the web at work, streaming our favorite show in a waiting room, or watching the game live at home, Cox Media's digital video solutions can deliver your business's message to consumers in a way that creates a meaningful connection and drives them to take action. Grow your business. Call Cox Media today.